My name is Strauss. Welcome to my channel. Let's talk about how much I spend per month living near Tel Aviv, Israel. Now, some of these costs are shared with my husband and some are covered by me on my own, but this should give you a sense of how much a two-person household with a baby on the way would spend living near Tel Aviv. I actually live just outside Tel Aviv in a neighboring city called Ramat Gan, but it takes me about 10 minutes to get to Tel Aviv, and I only chose to live on the outskirts so that I can have a 3-bedroom apartment, or as they say in Israel, a 4-room apartment, because in Israel they don't just count the bedrooms, they include the living room when they say how many rooms the apartment is. So they will refer to a 3-bedroom unit as a 4-room apartment if it also has a living room. Anyways, so I wanted a 4-room apartment in a desirable area, but if I lived in Tel Aviv, I probably would have gotten 1 less bedroom for the same amount of money and the same quality of apartment. So that's why I decided to move a little bit outside. But let's jump into all of my costs. First is my mortgage. I bought an apartment, so I don't pay rent, but I do pay a monthly mortgage payment. Mortgages are much more complex in Israel, and you can't get a fully fixed rate loan. Some portion of the mortgage is always going to be a variable rate, which means your payments will go up or down depending on the national interest rate each month. I plan to do at some point a separate video talking about mortgages and how they work in Israel. So you should be sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications if you want to see that video in the future. But anyways, based on my current interest rates, my monthly mortgage payment per month is about 12,356 shekel per month, or $3,275.33 in US dollars. But if you wanted to rent an apartment of similar size, it actually wouldn't cost you as much per month in rent as it costs a new homeowner in a mortgage payment on a home of equal value. The reason for this is complex, but usually in Israel, the rental prices do not cover current costs of newly issued mortgages. I think this is due to 2 main reasons. One, there are enough landlords who took out their mortgage on their home a long time ago when the cost of homes were lower, so their mortgage is either fully paid off or else their monthly payments are much lower, and so they drive costs down in the market. But more importantly, the average Israeli does not have a very high salary. Those who can afford to buy a home usually try to, but those who can't afford, which is most people, they will usually be locals who can only afford to pay so much in rent, which means that rent tends to lag quite a bit behind mortgage costs because people who can afford mortgages tend to make more than people who are having to rent. Anyways, based on current market values, you could probably rent an apartment of the same size and quality as mine in an area where I live for about 8,000 shekel per month, or $2,120.64. But of course, you won't be building any equity with that monthly payment, and rental prices will go up over time. Anyways, my next cost of living is student loans, which I pay about $1,300 per month. Then for Arnona, which is Hebrew for municipal property taxes, for 1 year it's about 4,000 shekel, which is 333 shekel per month, or $88.27 per year. This is a cost that a renter pays if you're renting. So the municipal property taxes is passed through to renters, so you should allocate for this even if you plan to rent. Electricity is billed every 2 months, so on a 2-month interval, it's about 1,000 shekels, so that's about 500 shekel per month, which is the equivalent of $132.54 in USD per month. Vod Bayit, which is HOA, is for us another 100 shekel per month, but it can be several hundred per month for nicer buildings. And if you're renting, you're also covering this cost. That comes out to about $26.51 in USD per month. For Wi-Fi and television, you're gonna pay at least about 80 shekel per month, or $21.21 in USD. For me, in the past month, groceries cost about 388.08 shekel per month, which is the equivalent of $102.87 in USD. But I spent a lot more eating out because I was actually traveling during part of that month and I was in London. Eating out in Israel, I spent about 72.88 shekel per month, which was $19.32 in USD. But then I went to London for part of the month, and that's where I spent a lot of money eating out. I spent the equivalent of 708 shekel and kind of 6 cents, or 6 agurot, which is the equivalent of $187.80 in USD. But because of that, I did spend less on groceries. So I guess my total for food for the month is about $309.99. So we can assume in an average month that I would actually spend about $309.99 in USD on food. Now, this doesn't include what my husband contributes in an average month, but that's largely because he was actually on active reserve duty during that month. And so most of his meals were during Army service and covered by the Army, so he didn't actually spend anything extra that month. So this cost was largely just to feed myself for the month. And I would imagine that in a typical month, we'd probably spend more than that on groceries. So I would imagine in an average month, he does spend a couple $100 on food as well. But my groceries then might be actually lower than $300 because obviously eating out is more costly than eating at home. So maybe together we spend about $400 a month on food. I did have one parking cost because I had to take the car into Tel Aviv, and I paid 36 shekel, which is the equivalent of $9.54 in USD. Now I don't typically use a car, but since my husband was in reserve duty, he left the car with me. And during the time that I used the car, I did fill up the gas, and I did use the car occasionally for like weekend trips to go see family and friends. And during that time, I spent about 220 shekel to fill up the car. But with my driving habits, that usually lasts me about 2 weeks. In a normal month, when my husband is working his regular job, he takes the car every day, and he probably fills up the car every 5 days. So let's go ahead and base the cost on his typical usage just to be conservative in our calculations. He estimated that he spends 300 shekel per week on gas, which is the equivalent of $79.52 per week in USD. That means in a regular month, it costs our household about $318.08 in USD per month on gas. Now for toiletries and household items, I spent about $77.39, and I am the one who primarily purchases all of that for the house. And then I did spend on other transportation such as train, bus, Uber, a total of 272 shekel and 33 agurot, which is equivalent to $72.19 in USD. Most of this was on transportation while I was in London, so it's definitely higher than my typical transportation costs because I work from home. I usually stay close to the home most days of the week, and I'm not traveling all that much. Now for shopping, I did spend 221 shekel and 20 agurot on shoes, which is the equivalent of about $58.64 in USD. And then I bought a couple of baby stuff and things to prepare for the birth because I'm having a baby in a couple of weeks. So the total spent on shoes and random miscellaneous new baby items was $304.66 in USD. Now the baby items were all largely like one-time big costs, like a stroller or something like that that's not a recurring cost, and they're not typical monthly costs for us at this stage in our life. But I'm sure once the baby comes, we will find ourselves spending an average recurring amount each month on essential baby items like diapers, baby wipes, what have you. So I think we can keep this in here as a reflection of what a household with a newborn baby might spend in an average month on baby product. You know, they grow really quickly and they need new clothes pretty frequently, which is a little bit nerve-wracking. So we'll keep that cost in there. And this doesn't even include if you're gonna need a nanny or childcare services. That monthly cost is also not included here, but I think it is fair to say that this figure can represent just the basic essentials you will have to buy on a recurring basis each month. So if you have other childcare costs, you should obviously add those in at the end of these calculations to account for that as well. But luckily in Israel, childcare is mostly subsidized after the child is 3 years old. So you would only need to pay a large sum out of pocket for daycare when they are very young. And obviously people don't put their newborn in daycare right away because we have state-sponsored maternity leave. So for the first few months, the wife gets to be at home. And because of that, I hope I won't need to put my child in daycare for at least several months after the baby is born. But when I do return back to work, this will of course depend on the child and their personality, sleeping habits, etc., whether I put them in daycare or get a nanny or what have you. And the cost will differ depending on what city you live in. Where I live is like a more desirable city center area, so the cost can be about 5,000 shekel per month for childcare, and that's about $1,326.53 in USD per month per child. But again, you're only paying that until they get to about the age of 3, when they can go to like a state-sponsored kindergarten. But in most cities across Israel, the cost is only about half of that. Plus, once your child becomes 3 years old, again, you have compulsory free education for all ages over 3. So if you're living in an area that is a little bit more removed from like a really popular major city, your childcare costs should be much more reasonable. Now let's talk about subscriptions. I do pay for certain like streaming channels online or Spotify or like New York Times subscription or things like that, Netflix, etc. And then I also have some subscriptions that are associated with like my YouTube channel, like Adobe Premiere, Canva. I pay a little bit for ChatGPT, Google Storage. So my total subscriptions for the month is actually $105.25 in USD. So I need to cut back some of those because that feels a little bit high. But in the month that we are calculating for, that is how much I spent on subscriptions. For our car, we actually own our car. It's a pretty beat down old car, but it gets the job done. And so we don't have any monthly payments. Now let's talk about insurance. Basic healthcare in Israel is free. If you're working, it's covered by tax withholdings from your paycheck that are similar to like Social Security tax withholdings in America. So that should be all accounted for and you should have healthcare already built in. But we do have a private healthcare supplement as well as car insurance, homeowners insurance, and life insurance. For all of those insurances, we pay about 800 shekel per month, which is the equivalent of $212.06 in USD per month. So in general, insurance in Israel is actually pretty cheap. Like I don't even remember how much our supplement for our healthcare costs, but it's definitely less than $100 for the both of us together, both me and my husband. And to get all of those insurances I just mentioned for $212 in USD per month is obviously a really good deal. Now my mobile phone costs me about 67 shekel and 80 agurot a month, which is the equivalent of only $17.97. That's a really nice thing about Israel. Cell phone service is really, really cheap here. In bank fees, I paid a total of about 12 shekel in my Israeli bank account and about $35 in my American bank account. So the 12 shekel fee is about $3.20 in USD. And then obviously the American bank account, I had a $35 fee, but I'm negotiating with my US bank to lower or eliminate these. And if you have direct deposit set up on your checking account, you should be able to avoid those fees. But because I get paid in shekel to my Israeli account and not my US account, I can't have direct deposit set up on my US account. So I end up paying some fee associated with that account, which is kind of annoying because back when I lived in America and had direct deposit set up, I didn't have any checking account fees, which is just frustrating. So I'm trying to negotiate that out with my bank. So the global total you've been waiting for, drum roll please. The global total for a household of 2 with a newborn baby on the way is $6,397.46. Now it's clear that more than $4,500 of that is just spent on my mortgage and student loans. So if you don't have a lot of student loan debt and you don't need to live in such a large apartment, then your cost should be significantly reduced compared to ours. If you choose to rent instead of buying, and if you only need a 1 or 2 room apartment, not a 3 or 4 room apartment, you can easily cut your monthly rent down to about between 1,500 and 1,900 USD. If you did that, and if you also didn't have any student loan payments, you would be spending about 2,600 US dollars less per month than we do, which would bring your monthly costs under 4,000 USD per month. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos about managing your finances or living in Israel, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on the post notification bell to be notified when I post a new video. And if you enjoyed this video, you should be sure to watch this next video over here, which YouTube thinks you're really gonna enjoy. Thank you guys all so much for watching.